A side, B side, what side are you on?
Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of A Side B Side podcast. I don't know why I said it like that. What's going on, Adam?
I'm just excited that we're a little bit more country today. So
I'm a little bit country. I'm a little bit rock and roll.
was that too many seconds? Are we gonna have to pay for the rights?
I think it was just under. Just under.
Perfect. All right.
Yes.
Our legal team is just scrambling right now.
Thanks, Donnie and Marie. So, Adam, before we get into it, I have to tell you this because I heard this and I was like, okay, I cannot forget to tell him.
Okay.
So, I know you're a big Dungeons and Dragons fan.
Yeah. Been playing for 6 years every Monday night until COVID messed with the schedule.
So, Nerds Candy and D&D are teaming up, and they are releasing special Nerds D&D products. And if you buy those products, you buy so many products, you get points, and they release a digital Nerds Dungeons and Dragons character, and you can collect them all, and each one allows you like different levels on the virtual Dungeons and Dragons Nerds board and all this stuff.
Wow, they're really going into it. I'm curious to see how. I mean, nerds are. It's kind of hard to tell what the heck they are. They're just little. They're tiny.
Yeah.
So it's not like you can have them like shaped like a dragon. They're just like little tiny pieces of candy. So I mean, maybe the box will be the thing. Who knows?
I don't know.
Sounds interesting though.
But I thought of you when I heard that, or when I read that story. I was like, I was talking about it on air, and I was like, oh, this is for Adam.
Yeah. Well, we will definitely get some, and for our D&D nights once they start up again, they've been kind of hit or miss. We've been very cautious because you get 7-8 people in a small room and a lot of talking and breathing. So we've been taking breaks when anybody is remotely exposed. So
yeah.
We're on a break right now because we just had the Minnesota State Fair up here, which hopefully we'll still call it the State Fair, not the Minnesota Super Spreader event.
Oh
In
yeah.
a couple weeks, but
it's outside. Fortunately, that's
outside,
a good thing.
And attendance was down 50%, so it was about half as much as it had been the year before.
Did they make you have did you have to have like a test or a vaccination to get in?
No, there was nothing. You just had to pay the fee and get in there and you're good to go. So we'll see. Like you said, it's outdoors. Hopefully that helps. And this week also everybody's back to school and a lot of businesses are doing back in the office. So I think September is going to be a really interesting petri dish. We're going to see how this culture plays out.
Interesting. So I am sure you have seen it, the new Marvel movie.
I did. I got to see it on Sunday night. I actually I have to, between where I live and the movie theater is the State Fair. So I left my house with 2 hours to spare because every bus in the known area is used to get the people to the State Fair. So my route, which usually takes about 20 minutes, took an hour and 20 minutes just to get from my home to the mall because of all the stops and all the people getting on and off and all the delays. It was worth the commute though. I got there early. I didn't miss a single second. There was like 30 minutes of previews. There were a lot of previews. But it was, in my opinion, certainly worth the wait. And I'm excited to see where they go from there. And it was one of those movies where, I think it's like 2.5 hours long, but at no point was I like, oh, this is long. Got done. I looked at my watch. I was like, oh, I got to get going.
Well, my youngest saw it and she's like, I need to see it again. It was amazing. So I'm hoping Sunday to see it.
Yeah, the fight choreography especially was really, really good.
That's what I heard.
You just the character, the bad guy, and I think that Marvel's always done this a little bit. Like even with Thanos, you could kind of see some of his reasoning in Ultron. He had humans are the biggest threat to the planet sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
but they make so many of the villains have edges. They're not just like, I'm evil, dude. Ah, ha, ha. No,
Right.
it's but this one is, as somebody who hopes to continue acting someday in a big way, that was the role is so meaty. You get to transform throughout as throughout the movie and the flashbacks, and it's probably, in my opinion, one of the best crafted villains. And I even hesitate to use the word villain in some ways, because by the end you're like really conflicted in some ways. So
Yeah.
it was really well done, and it's one of those things where you wonder, like, Loki was sort of just a guy from the first Thor movie, and then he's become such a huge part of the Marvel universe. And Thanos now is, he popped up in the What If with the Guardians of the Galaxy and Black Panther. So it'll be neat to see if they revisit this character.
So I heard, or I read, that it was such a huge draw in theaters that AMC is kind of saying it has turned the tides for theater going again, like in a positive way.
I heard that it was a huge hit. I hope that's right, because I've gone to several movies this summer. This is the first movie that I went to that was full.
Yeah.
The theater was, I mean, it wasn't like every seat was taken, but it was full. Like the only seats that were left were like at the far corners and like the front row in the middle. It's like there was definitely worth buying a ticket ahead of time so I could get a good seat.
I mean, post-pandemic, that is saying something.
Yeah. And it was like, usually with a big Marvel movie, you'd have some late night showings, and I went to the 7:30, and it was the second latest showing of the day. There was an 8:05, and it was it.
Oh, wow.
I mean, and they're not doing anything early, like at least at this AMC by me, movies start earliest at like 2:00 in the afternoon. There's no 1:00, there's no 11:00 matinees. So if they pulled in these numbers, they're doing it with even less showings than
wow. Well, so the star of Shang-Chi, Simu, threw out a pitch. I'm trying to remember the game, but he throws out like a perfect pitch and then does this like flawless backflip on the mound.
Nice. Yeah,
it was great.
The stunts are so well done, and it's such a mix of physical ability, but it just feels like there's so much more. I read that a lot of the fights were choreographed by a gentleman who studied under Jackie Chan. He passed away before the movie finished, but a lot of the fights were choreographed by him before he passed away. And there is that definite, like, the coolest thing about Jackie Chan movies is like everything's real. It's not camera tricks. It's not like he's actually doing all this stuff. And then you see at the end, you see all like the bloopers where he like gets hit in the hand because he's actually doing it. So the action feels really grounded and real. It doesn't feel it doesn't feel like CGI.
Yeah. Have you seen anything else?
I haven't. I worked a couple doubles last week to cover for people at the State Fair, and I was all set last night to watch the new animated Netflix film that is a kind of a spin-off of the Witcher series. And I literally sat down and pressed play and then started to fall asleep and turned it off and actually went to bed. So
wow,
it's a very weird thing for me.
That is weird for you.
Yeah, I didn't like it.
You didn't like being able to sleep?
Well, it's weird. I was like very thrown off. I'm like, this is not normal. Like usually I have to like forcibly put myself to bed like I'm dealing with a toddler, but not this week lately. So we'll see if that continues.
So I watched this past week Clickbait on Netflix. And I have to tell you, I did not think it was one of those where I was like, I'll just see what it's about. I got, I'm in the middle of some things and I need something to, keep me busy while I'm doing stuff. And man, I was hooked. They did a very good job on that series.
And this is the one with
we talked about it we talked about it a little bit last week, but I finished it up.
From Entourage. Yeah.
Yes. Man, it was good. Also on Hulu, Only Murders in the Building. Steve Martin. We had talked about it coming out. Well, it's out. Yes. They've got 4 episodes out. Steve Martin, Martin Short, and Selena Gomez, and it's hilarious. Yeah. And I started Nicole Kidman. She has a 9 Perfect Strangers, I think it's called.
Yeah, it's got like quite the cast. It's like almost everybody in those 9 people is a name actor, and it seems like the trailers have me confused. It's clearly not supposed to be funny.
No.
And I think it's supposed to be sort of like creepy thriller thingy.
That's the impression I'm getting. I haven't gotten to the creepy thriller part. I think they're just now leading into the creepy thriller parts, and I'm about 2 or 3 episodes in. So it's kind of it's a build. So last week I promised an update announcement for the big 60, since we're going into extreme adulthood here.
Yes.
For the big 60.
Well, we're not 60, but the podcast
podcast is.
I mean, or you could say we're barely over a year old. We're 14 months.
You could look at it that way too.
We're not even into 2T yet. See, now we sound real young.
Just a baby. So some exciting things happening. I just had to make sure that, everything was good where I am before I made the big announcement. But so I will be moving. So when I say I've been busy, it's because I've been packing. And I have another job. Of course, my main job, the job that pays for us to be able to do the podcast. On my end, I mean, you have a job that pays on your end.
I am not moving.
So I, out of the blue, received a phone call from a radio station, and they said they had been listening and they liked what they heard, and they wanted to talk to me about the possibility of moving, and things have worked out. So I will be heading to Lincoln, Nebraska.
And they listened and heard the podcast as well.
They did.
So even if this never blows up to 5 seasons in a movie level, I think this has already been a rousing success, in my opinion, at least, because I'm going to take just a little bit of credit for that. As being part of the draw that got them to give you a call. So
that granted, totally 100%.
Yeah, it was just, it just was another thing out there. If we didn't do the podcast, maybe who knows? Maybe that was the one thing they were like, all right, she's got a radio show and she does a podcast.
Wow. They were on the edge, and then they were like, podcast. Oh, yep. That's her. This
is a really good podcast. I guess we should hire her to do radio too.
But so yeah, next week is the big move. So next week may be a little funny on the podcast, but exciting, very excited.
It's very cool stuff. Yeah, I am very excited, and it's really not affecting me in any way, shape, or form that I could tangibly talk about, but I'm super excited. So.
I love that you are sending me texts so how's it going? Or what's going on? Like you are really into this.
I am living vicariously. Absolutely. Yeah. I have physically stopped myself from texting because I'm like, all right, she's got so much going on. The last thing she needs is that little ding, and then she looks down at the phone, and it's Adam going, "What's going on?" Like the last thing you need. I don't need to be like a little cartoon character just popping up, going, "Tell me what's happening. Tell me what's happening."
No, I'm very excited. Super nervous. And everybody's like, but this is what you do. And I'm like, yeah, but I've been here for 17 years almost. So I mean, I'm comfortable. I'm in my groove. This is a whole new market, but I'm excited for the challenge. So
I mean, different dance floor, same groove.
I like that. I like that.
Oh. You're not going to forget how to dance. This is not reverse footloose.
Oh man. All right. So episode 60, which means you go first. You ready?
I'm ready. So for the A side today, I wanted to talk about something that is old, but also going to be very new, coming up even within the next week of when this podcast comes out. I have been, as I mentioned, I moved last summer, so I went through all of my stuff and put some stuff in storage and moved around and kind of went through old boxes and have found old movies and gone through old comic books. And I was looking at topics for this week, and I was all set to do a whole podcast on the new Witcher TV movie that's coming out on Netflix, and the spinoffs and the whole world that's created with The Witcher, and how it's kind of Netflix is looking at that to be kind of its Game of Thrones-esque world building thing. Amazon's got Lord of the Rings, and it seems like Netflix is doing the sword and sorcerers thing with The Witcher. But I fell asleep during the viewing of the movie last night, and so I've tabled that for a different time and gone back to another subject that I am very excited about. And it's kind of snuck up on me, as so much as this fall, but a brand new series is debuting on September 13th. So that's going to be Monday, and it is streaming on Hulu. And it is a story that I first discovered way back in 2002 when it premiered as a comic book. And I have gone in my life through ebbs and flows of collecting comics. I've gone pretty much like 15 to 18 month periods where I bought every single issue of something, and then I got distracted by life, and a year went by and I jumped back into it. And usually when I jump back into it, I would always try to find something that was starting, because I'd have my regular comic books that I would read, the X-Men and Fantastic Four and whatnot, but I would always try to find something that was new. And if I could walk into a comic book store and there was a first edition of something, the very first comic, a number one, I would pick that up. And I remember picking up the number one of this comic, and to this date, it's actually one of my more valuable ones that I've collected. And as soon as the pandemic is over, I will get it graded and put it in the plastic, little slab. But I picked it up thinking this is a really interesting concept, and I have no idea where they're going to go with it. But it feels like if this works, it's going to be something that turns into a bigger story, like bigger than just comic books. It would become a movie, it'd become a television series, it would become, more of a cultural event if it worked. And at first I thought it was going to. The comic book is The Last Man. Why The Last Man? And it revolves around a eerily familiar world. It is a post-apocalyptic world where a plague has decimated the population. In this case, instead of it being a viral event, it is a plague that attacks every mammal with a Y chromosome. So in the original comic book series, that basically meant suddenly every man in the world died, except for one.
Can I tell you real fast? Because I normally don't look at the links that you send me until after we discuss it. And I glanced and I saw The Last Man, and I totally thought you were going to be talking about The Last Man Standing.
Oh. Yeah, perhaps on another episode of a Side by Side podcast. But no, this is why The Last Man. It's a post-apocalyptic future where all of a sudden everything with a Y chromosome dies all at the same time, and all that is left in the world with a Y chromosome. And in the original comic book, it was a very binary setup. So you had they just kept referring to it as men and women. The only man left on Earth was this gentleman named York, and he's just sort of a dude. He's a wannabe escape artist, like gets tied up in the straitjacket and wiggles his way out. And his monkey, and it was the early 2000s, coming right off the late 90s. So the capuchin monkey was everywhere, including this comic book. He's got his monkey with him, and they are the last two carriers of the Y chromosome. The series goes into how the entire world deals with, almost like a Thanos-like snap, where 50% of the population disappears. You imagine if it happens immediately and somebody dies, it was, it's probably the darker side of the Thanos snap that the MCU doesn't talk about. But when Thanos snapped his fingers, there had to be people who were snapped, who were flying planes. That plane's probably going to go down. In this scenario, every male in the world drops dead. So a lot of that happened. It wasn't just all the men dying or the Y chromosome carriers dying. It was, the people that maybe they're on the plane with them, or in a truck, or, in a car, or on a bus, or, who knows where, running the power grid. And so the series goes into basically how did the plague happen, but it's more about how society reacts after this incredible event, and how problems don't just cease to exist. There's still racism, there's still class inequality, there's still wars, there's still people struggling to survive, even when you get rid of one traditional gender. So I thought, hey, this is a really interesting concept. I was also a 22-year-old white male who saw a 20-something white male as the only guy left in the world, and thought, hey, that's a really interesting concept to me. And I figured Hollywood's going to grab onto this and turn it into a movie as well, because it just seems to fit. It was scheduled to be a early 2000s movie. In fact, in 2006, it was all set up to have to be added to Shia LaBeouf's career arc. But that, much like his career arc, self-destructed. It then spent 10 years, from 2004 to 2014, in classic Hollywood quagmire. It bounced around from stars being attached, to writers being attached, to studios not knowing what to do with it. They were going to make it a movie, then it was going to be a TV series. At one point, after Shia LaBeouf dropped out, it was Zachary Levi from Shazam and then the Chuck series at the same time was going to do it, and then he got dropped. Then we had the Jericho writers. After Jericho came out and was doing well, they were like, okay, we'll have them do it because here's a post-apocalyptic thing, and then they dropped off. By the time it got to 2013, there was I think, fourth or fifth director attached to it, and they were like, we're going to start in January of 2014, and then they realized it wasn't going to happen. And so the rights finally went back to the co-creators, Pia Guerra and Brian where did he go? Brian K. Vaughan, who then moved on to doing a TV series that they were more in control of once they got the rights back. So long story short, this TV series gets greenlit, and it goes through its own quagmire. At first, you had showrunners that were attached to it, and then they dropped out. They had a lead actor, Barry Keoghan, who is going to be in the upcoming Eternals. He's an Irish actor. He was announced as the number one guy, the lead actor. Then he dropped out. At one point, Timothy Hutton was going to be in the series all the way up until filming started last spring. He was supposed to be in it. Then all of a sudden they said, nope, we redid, the script. So he's out. The only person that really stuck around through the entire TV quagmire was Diane Lane. And Diane Lane plays one of the main characters in the series. So the last man. Y, it stands for York, which is the last man. And his mom ends up is a congresswoman And spoiler alert, she ends up becoming president because the line of succession falls all the way to her. She's completely shocked because she's certainly not second, third, fourth, or fifth, maybe even 10th in line by the time it finally gets to her. She becomes president, and the story revolves, at least in the comic books, around Yorick, his mom, and then his sister Hero as well. There's also Agent 355, who his mom assigns to keep him alive because he's the last Y chromosome carrier, and they're going to try to figure out, if they can fix that so the human race can continue, or what they're going to go forward with that. And it was a very global story, but really focused on those three characters. Whereas the TV series looks like it's going to expand a little bit. As when this came out in 2002, a story about gender being completely binary was expected and the norm. But where we're at as a society and how we've grown and how our understanding of gender has changed, luckily it sounds like even though the show has gone through this quagmire, it's found a way forward that is going to be a little bit more broad of its gender determination. So the showrunner now and the writer of the first 3 episodes is Eliza Clark. And one of the big things that the show struggled with was adapting to how attitudes and how understanding has changed over the last 20 years. And that especially goes to what is gender, and is it just, it's more than simply a chromosome. So the showrunners, Eliza Clark, during an interview, went into how they're going to update it. So in the original show, the original comic book, they mentioned that Y is the last man, Yorick, but that there are some transgender people, but the comic really doesn't mentions it, but it doesn't talk about that storyline very much. It just kind of does it offhand. The TV adaptation is expanding on that and some of the ramifications on how that's going to happen. So the showrunners have specified that there are trans women with Y chromosomes who also were affected by the plague, as well as individuals with androgen insensitivity who were completely unaware that they possess the Y chromosome who were affected. And then they've also added a character who is a trans man who's played by a trans actor, Elliot Fletcher, to flesh out that story as well. And Elliot Fletcher, the actor, actually said it was very interesting to him because it feels in this world things get flipped, because York can walk around and he looks like a man, but everyone assumes that he's a trans man because all the biological or men that were born that way have passed away. So it flipped. So everyone just assumes that if you look male, that you're a trans male instead of being, a natural Y chromosome character. So that was an interesting flip. The show comes out on Monday, and I'm curious to see how the world is going to respond to it. As I've read the reviews and I've watched the trailers, and I remember, going back and read it, it's bleak. It's post-apocalyptic. It's, one reviewer referred to it as, like the Battlestar Galactica meets Handmaid's Tale meets The Walking Dead, which that's some dark, bleak, it's not super uplifting. And I think one of the, we just talked about Shang-Chi and how well it did this weekend is it's a fun movie and it gives you something to believe in. And it feels like it hits at the right time when we're all just wanting some good, some goodness and some, there are down points in the movie, but happiness, like a fun Marvel adventure movie. And it does such a good job. I'm worried that Y the Last Man, the series, is going to feel a little too real. The dealing with the pandemic, dealing with the plague, dealing with the social issues. And I'm curious to see if it will be embraced or if it's going to be one of those shows, which I think takes a while to kind of build up steam. I think it's really clever. Clever. I think it's a wise decision for FX, which is partnering with Hulu. So it's going to be on Hulu streaming on so FX on Hulu, but they're not releasing it en masse. I think we've kind of got past the period where everything just gets released, all the episodes at once. More and more, we're seeing that they're kind of releasing one episode at a time.
Yeah, we're going back to the old school.
Yeah, it's more of the old school, style, the weekly serial type of thing. And I think that is a really good idea for this type of show, because just even from the trailer, it's going to be heavy. It's not the type of show that you can really, I think, that you want to sit down and binge watch. I remember when the third season of Game of Thrones was coming out, I was excited and I wanted to like catch up. And so I bought seasons 1 and 2 on DVD and then decided I was going to binge watch 1 and 2 all the way through and journal and blog about it. And I made it like 2/3 of the way through the first season before I was just like, you know what, man, I can't do this. I need like a week break in between episodes because it is a lot of down. And when you do it back to back to back, it can overwhelm you. So I'm really interested to see how people react to it. I'm excited. I think it's a really interesting story. The comic book was something that captured my attention 20 years ago. I like how they're adapting and updating it. And I think that there are a lot of stories that can be told with those adaptations that are going to be, they're going to fit the world and also going to enhance the story as opposed to changing anything about it. I mean, there are definitely, when you're talking about a comic book and the main character being the only, man in the world, it can lean into, silliness of teenage boys thinking that they're going to be kings, or there's going to be some double entendres. And for the most part, the comic book series avoided that silliness, but it sounds like the TV series is completely avoiding it, which is even better. So I'm excited. It comes out on Monday. If you're interested in more about Y the Last Man, you can find the comic books on Amazon. It was released in a total of 60 issues. Those have then been collected into trade paperbacks. And then there are, if you really want to shell out, there are 5 hardcover deluxe volumes that have the entire series. I know that I haven't read the whole series. There was a gap when my ebbs and flows of comic book collecting happened, and I jumped back in, and there was so much had changed in the series that I was like, I have no idea what's going on, because it does cover quite a bit. The comic book series deals with a global scale, and over those 60 episodes, crosses the entire globe, literally. But it sounds like the TV series is going to keep things really focused for this first 10 episode arc on the US, and really kind of like the first 5 or 6 storylines from the comic books. So the showrunner Eliza Clark said there could be up to 5 seasons worth of content from the original material. So if there are 60 episodes, that means we're covering less than like 10 issues in this first season. So it's got a lot to go. So you can find those on Amazon. The deluxe covers are not cheap. And then, of course, starting September 13th, which is Monday, the first episode of Y the Last Man will be streaming on FX on Hulu.
Awesome. I think I'm going to watch it. I think I'm going to check it out.
I'm really cautiously optimistic. And I really like what they've done about updating it. So I think some of the silliness from, the comic book idea of it, that it'll be a little bit more grounded in reality. So I hope that is evidenced by by what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't forget to remind me because, man, I only have a little bit going on at the moment. So
I will. I mean, there's only, you're only uprooting your entire life and moving
just
to a place
little.
you visited once. So, I mean, whatever.
Sure.
Whose main restaurant serves a dish that you cannot eat. So it's like this is, when you put it in those things, it's a little scary.
But yeah, I really want to see this. So just remind me, send me like a quick text. I don't mind that one at all.
Yeah. That'll just be mixed in with the how's it going? Well, how'd they react? Have you got everything packed?
Right. How's the packing going? Why don't you come here and find out how the packing is going, Adam? Oh man. All right. So that's the A side.
That is the A side. Check out The Lost Man premiering Monday, September 13th. Not sponsored by FX on Hulu, but certainly willing to take their money.
Right. Hulu. I have a subscription. I would love excuse me. I would love a sponsorship.
Yeah. We're down with that. I'm pretty sure I've subscribed to you too, because I subscribe to everything.
Yeah, because I tell you I got that Disney bundle and I was like, oh, I'm going to be saving so much money. I'm actually paying 1 penny more.
Yeah, no, that's the same thing happened to me. And the best part about that is they charge you the 1 penny.
Yes, they totally charge you the 1 penny.
You'll be like flipping, you're like looking at your bank account. You're like, who charged me a penny?
Yeah.
Oh, Disney.
Yeah. Oh, that's my bundle. I've got ESPN. Yeah. There's 7s. I'm here for you.
But hey, I mean, I do, because for me, it was like ESPN was the one that they were like, oh, and you can add ESPN. I'm like, cool. It's like, it's a penny. I'm like, all right, I will definitely get value out of that. I will get at least 1 penny of value every month.
Get a penny's worth of watching out of ESPN. I don't even get my penny's worth, to tell you the truth.
Well, I get more than my penny's worth because the ESPN Plus, it's pretty awesome. With the US Open, you can watch, like, you can do the multi-screen thing on my Xbox. I can watch up to 4 different tennis matches at once, or 4 different broadcasts of stuff. So with my 3 TVs and then 4 in the middle, I can watch 6 different things at one time. So I'm definitely getting my penny's worth.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're getting yours and mine as well.
Yeah. They're losing money on me and they're gaining it on you. It's all how it works out.
Yeah. All right. So this week, a couple of weeks ago, when I was back home, actually, we talked about Judy Buenoano. Remember old Judy? Yes. Judy was we thought
Judy with the good.
Well, it ain't hair. So we talked about Judy with the good, right? And we thought, man, that woman is like, she's legit wild, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, she gets beat tonight. Like in a Royal Rumble between Judy with the good and this woman, Judy goes down. Hardcore.
Down goes Judy.
So this week, our story seems less like a true crime and more like a Lifetime movie. Like, it doesn't seem like this would actually happen. It's got poisoning.
It's got like a bookshop owner who meets the single dad who just moved into town who is running a pig farm.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, cool.
That is the exact storyline. How did you know?
I watch a lot of Lifetime.
So we've got poisoning, fake deaths, fake obituaries, fake siblings, and more.
This is like Days of Our Lives.
Just you wait. So this is the story of Audrey Marie Hilley. So Audrey Marie, she was born Audrey Marie Frazier on June 4th of 1933 in Blue Mountain, an area of Anniston, Alabama, to mill workers Lucille Meads and Huey Frazier. So Audrey was basically raised by 2 aunts because her parents worked really long hours. Mill workers, they're working a lot. Audrey was spoiled by her parents, and they denied her absolutely nothing. I'm sure that was part of their I'm not a psychologist or anything. I'm just, as a parent, when you feel guilty, you kind of overcompensate. So I'm sure that was part of that. Like, we're not around a lot. Let's spoil her type of a thing.
I'm not a psychologist either, but I've spoken to a lot of them, and that sounds like something they'd say.
So Audrey was known to throw really violent tantrums, which kind of goes with the whole being spoiled, throw tantrums, you get it. And she was so coddled by her parents that they allowed her to sleep in their bed with them until way past the age when most children learn to sleep on their own. And that's in a book by R.R. MacDonald. It's his 1986 book called Black Widow about Audrey. So Audrey attended Quinter Junior High, and at the age of 14, she was voted prettiest girl in school. So Audrey begins dating Frank Alfred Hilly, who was a junior in high school while she's 14. Was that freshman?
That's like 8th grade.
Well, she was, junior high. You're right. Yeah. Oh, look at old Frankie boy robbing the cradle.
Yeah, we don't like Frankie.
So Frank and Audrey had a very contentious relationship, on top of the fact that he was severely robbing the cradle with a middle schooler. Frank enlisted in the Navy because remember, they started dating when he was a junior. So they were dating all through his completion of high school. He enlisted in the Navy. And when he was away, he would send romantic letters to Audrey. So when he returns, Frank and Audrey Marie, or Marie, I may go between because she was called both. Mm-hmm. They marry on May 8th of 1951 while he was home on leave. Frank was stationed in Guam while in the Navy. And while he was over there in Guam and Audrey was home, he would send his paychecks home to her because he was wanting for her to save the money. She did not, in fact, save the money. She spent the money wildly. So the couple, they moved to California until he is discharged from the Navy. And then the two moved back to Anniston, Alabama. So back in Anniston, the pair worked together at a local foundry, which I had to look that up because I was like, A foundry is a place, it's a factory that makes metal castings. Did you know what a foundry was?
I think so, only because I've gone to breweries that are former foundry buildings, and I read the menu. I don't do a lot of iron working myself.
Your iron casting days are over.
I would say my life is iron working deficient. So
So Frank was a foreman and Marie was a secretary. Now they're both in really good jobs, but despite this fact, they have serious money issues. They couldn't save because Audrey had an exorbitant spending habit, which even if you don't have an overspender in a marriage, money is always a big issue. So imagine if you have somebody that's spending lavishly while the other one is trying to save. Issues.
Doesn't sound like that's going to go over real well.
So Huey and Lucille actually moved in with the Hillies when they were back in Anniston. Huey died of cancer in 1965. He was 57. Soon, both Frank and Mike, I guess I should have mentioned that they had kids. Where is that in my story? So they have 2 children, Mike and Carol. I somehow skipped that in my notes. Sorry.
They were spending a lot of money. They probably didn't talk much about the kids.
So soon Frank, the dad, and Mike began suffering from a mysterious illness. Mike's symptoms were basically written off as stomach flu by the doctors. His symptoms suddenly stop because Mike leaves home. Mike actually leaves home for seminary. It should be noted, Audrey bought a $25,000 life insurance policy on Michael before his illness. She was the sole beneficiary.
Oh, what a strange coincidence.
I can't imagine where the story is going. I can't imagine. No. So in 1975, Frank comes home early from work due to, remember, he's got some mysterious illness going on. So he leaves work, he comes home. He walks in the house to find Audrey in bed with her boss. Oof. But my thing is, you're still broken, you're sleeping with your boss. What are you doing?
No.
I mean, if you work in the system, girl, work it. Mom, you did not hear me say that. So apparently this was not her first affair either. Audrey's sister-in-law said that Audrey asked to live with her. While she was there, she was spotted with an unknown male. So Frank, distraught, turns to his son, Mike, the minister, for advice. The two actually met in Atlanta to talk. So Mike is in seminary, or Mike is living in Florida, and Frank is living in Alabama. So the two meet, and they meet up in Atlanta, and he talks to Mike. Mm-hmm. So Mike has revealed that he thinks that his dad, Frank, wanted to divorce his mom, Audrey. Audrey may have gotten this vibe too, because shortly after returning home from his trip with Mike, his condition worsened. He goes to the doctor. Frank goes to the doctor complaining of nausea and tenderness in his abdomen. He was diagnosed with a stomach ache. On May 22nd of 1975, Dr. Earl Jones, no, not James Earl Jones, just Earl Jones, prescribed medication to reduce Frank's stomach spasms. This medication was in capsule form, unlike what Crafty Marie had told Frank's sister, Frida. She told Frida that the medicine was to be administered intravenously and that Dr. Jones had authorized her to administer Frank's medication. After receiving said medications, Frank's condition did not improve. Are you surprised?
I am shocked. I really thought that this was going to take a turn for the better, as things usually do on the B side.
I know. You thought, oh, that Audrey is a good lady.
We're just going to find out that they worked it out, and then they had some grandkids, and now they write a book on couples counseling.
Right. This is what you do. Yeah. No, that's not how it goes. Nope. No. So, of course, Frank did not improve, and he was admitted to Regional Medical Center. Tests showed that Frank's liver was malfunctioning, and he was diagnosed with hepatitis. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit for you, because this is interesting. So on May 25th, in the middle of the night, Frank was found leaping through the front yard in total confusion. I don't know why, but like I envision this grown man in like a long sleeping shirt prancing through flowers. That's what I like had in my head when I read that.
Yeah.
I don't know why I put the grown man in like a long sleeping shirt, but like he's leaping through flowers, and that just came to my head.
Yeah, there's a very like old timey feel to it. Like he's got one of those sleeping caps on, and
yeah,
I hear you.
Okay, I'm not alone. Good. Frank is rushed to the hospital after displaying signs of paranoia and jaundice. Frank dies later that day.
Yeesh.
After Frank's death, an autopsy was performed. It was okayed by Audrey, and it revealed that he had swollen kidneys and lungs and bilateral pneumonia and an inflammation of his stomach. Well, these symptoms are very similar to those of hepatitis, which they had diagnosed him with. Yeah. So there was no need for an investigation, because they're like, oh, yeah, well, we called it hepatitis. There you go.
Yeah, the doctor's like, see, I knew it was hepatitis. That's why I gave him the medicine.
Said it all along. Yeah.
I diagnosed him with the stomach ache, which is just describing what he actually told me.
I diagnosed him with nausea, which is what he had. Yeah. Right. Yeah. We know. That's why we came here. Thanks, Doc.
Yeah. It's like, this man appears to have been shot. I would like to diagnose him as a shooting victim. Okay. Well done, Doc.
You did your job. So an insurance claim was submitted on a policy that Audrey had secretly taken out on Frank. Guess who was the beneficiary?
Probably the church.
You would think.
Yeah, no.
Audrey was the
Yeah.
sole beneficiary. She received $31,400. So after her influx of cash, she enjoyed a bit of shopping. She had a little spree. She purchased a new car, a motorcycle, and new furniture for her house. As you
She got a
do.
motorcycle?
Don't you, when you kill your husband with poison and file it under insurance? You get a motorcycle.
It's on my list of to-dos now. Right after get husband.
Get husband, poison, get motorcycle. No, yeah. Submit insurance, then get motorcycle.
Yeah. You got to do it in the right order because
don't get that motorcycle before the poison. You're in trouble.
You ever see this little old lady buying a motorcycle? Be like, no, she's fine. I'm not going to make any assumptions about her.
So after Frank's death, Mike, the son, started receiving calls from creditors that Audrey had promised money to. She was like, oh, Mike's got it. He's going to pay it for me. Just call him. What? So in 1976, the Hilly home began to receive anonymous letters threatening the family that if they didn't leave Anniston, things were going to happen. The letters looked like a child had written them. A neighbor of the Hillies, her name is Doris Ford, also received similar threatening letters. Audrey also reported several cases of vandalism of her home to her insurance company. And, well, she collected on those claims as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was later discovered that she was solely responsible for the vandalism and the notes. I would not have seen that coming from a mile away.
No, little motorcycle Black Widow. I didn't think she'd also commit fraud.
I know. So her son Mike eventually marries. He marries a woman named Terry. In 1976, same year, Terry suffers a miscarriage. There's speculation that it's due to poisoning. Her symptoms seem to match other victims of Audrey. Terry and Mike moved back to Anniston to help care for Audrey's mom, Lucille. After they suffered their miscarriage, they moved away again. There's a lot of moving around here.
Yeah, so they move back into town. She's pregnant. Then they lose the baby. They move back out of town.
Yes. So on September 5th of 1976, Audrey's house catches fire. Fortunately, or maybe conveniently, no one was home. Audrey sued Alabama Gas Company for the fire for $750. I said $750. $75,000. Quite a bit of difference.
Yeah, there's a substantial zero there.
Yeah, quite a few zeros I missed the first time. Sorry. She did lose the case, but she collected on insurance. Mm-hmm. So after Terry and Mike move, after their loss, Audrey is left caring for Lucille. Lucille's health declines. Lucille ends up passing away from a very aggressive form of cancer in January of 1977. Now, that's both of her parents that have passed from cancer. It should be noted that arsenic is a carcinogen, by the way.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm. Oddly coincidental there.
Yeah.
Audrey collects on a very modest burial policy for $600 for her mom.
$600.
Now, you remember the whole vandalism thing that Audrey may or was responsible for?
Right.
Responsible for. Well, during the investigation, when authorities were at the house, Audrey experimented on them by dosing cakes and cookies with various levels of arsenic. And the different officers would report various levels of illness after being at her house.
That is bold.
Yeah. But of course, at the time,
let's see if I can poison them too. Oh,
how many slices of cake will it take? But But of course, at the time, they're not making the connection.
No, they just think she's a bad cook.
Right. Later, it's like, well, I was at her house and I got sick too. Okay.
Yeah.
So on November 11th of 1977, Audrey's daughter Carol's car was stolen from the Oxford Mall parking lot. It was recovered 2 hours later on fire. It had been abandoned. Guess who collected insurance on that one?
Just gonna guess the Black Widow.
Yes. Yeah, Audrey. Mm-hmm. So 3 to 4 years after the death of Frank, Audrey took out a $25,000 policy on Carol, her daughter. It was an accidental death rider that took effect August of 1978. Within a few months, Carol began experiencing trouble with nausea. The very first time was on the night of her senior prom.
Oh.
Carol was taken to the ER several different times. Dr. William Wallace said Audrey showed nothing but concern for Carol at these times. During Carol's illness, Mike comes back into Alabama, into town, to confront his mother, Audrey, about her excessive spending. Because remember, now creditors are calling him looking for money. Mm-hmm. So he gets into town to talk to his mom about her spending. She's like, "Oh, son, I'm so happy to see you." She fixes him breakfast. Mike gets sick. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, Mike recovers. He leaves. He hauls butt back to Florida. So in 1979, a year after getting the policy on Carol, Audrey injects Carol with a concoction that she claims is to help alleviate her nausea. So for a year, this poor child has been dealing with these symptoms. Expectedly, the symptoms worsened. So she goes back to the hospital. The doctors perform tests. They can't find any medical explanation as to what is causing her symptoms. So they think it's psychosomatic. And she undergoes psychiatric testing at Birmingham's Caraway Methodist Hospital. While at Caraway, Audrey secretly gives Carol 2 more injections and warns Carol not to tell. Carol drops weight from 107 pounds to 87 pounds.
Yikes.
Audrey tells people that Carol has leukemia and is not allowed to have visitors. So you may be asking, why didn't she try to get away? But she did. Kind of. She did, and she kind of succeeded for a little bit. So Carol rented her own apartment initially against the wishes of Audrey. But Audrey finally relents. She even buys Carol furniture, like, okay, fine, you can move. I'm going to be the good mom. I'm going to even get you some furniture.
Yeah.
For her apartment.
You need this couch with the leaves on it. It's the 70s, so here's some shag carpeting.
Right. But she also insisted on spending nights with Carol. I'm moving out to get away from you, lady.
Yeah. You're moving out, so I can come sleep at your place then. No, that's not why we did this.
Right.
We're not trading.
We're not moving together. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
So Audrey spending nights with Carol, and Carol once even catches Audrey trying to disconnect her phone. But here's the thing. She didn't assume anything bad. She assumed that it was just Audrey trying to avoid creditors because they had started calling Carol to locate Audrey.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, at that point, Carol was like, yeah, let's just leave it off the hook. Yeah. We don't need a phone.
So, of course,
calling about my extended warranty.
We've been trying to reach you. Okay. So, of course, with Audrey staying with Carol, she's got tons of access, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she still continues to poison Carol. She even exploited Carol's illness to get money from family, friends, coworkers, and employers. Sick again, and with so much poison in her system, Carol's toes go completely numb. So she's once again admitted to Regional Medical Center. Now, you remember Audrey made Carol promise not to tell anyone about her special injections. Mm-hmm. Well, smart thinking Carol did eventually spill the beans, and she told her friend, a woman named Eve Cole. Eve in turn told Carol's family because she just felt like something wasn't right about that whole situation.
Yeah.
Carol's family immediately alerts doctors. Doctors, in turn, forbid Audrey from visiting. So There's
just like no scenario where someone secretly injecting something into you is a good thing. There's just like, no. I don't know, what do you like doing steroids in the 90s or like, there's no way that turns out good.
None whatsoever.
Maybe on like in a comic book you gain superpowers, but you'll be ostracized from society. So it's I don't know.
So Dr. Elmore at the hospital begins to suspect he's heard about these secret shots and Carol's sick. So he begins to suspect that Carol's symptoms were from heavy metal poisoning. Audrey finds out about his suspicions. She freaks out and immediately has Carol discharged from the hospital against doctor's advice.
Heavy Metal Poisoning is also the name of the A-side, B-side rock album coming out this fall.
That was my guitar riff.
That was... it was good. It's good.
I threw up the horns and everything, man. I was ready.
It's too bad it's a podcast.
I know, right? So Audrey claims that she had Carol discharged because, well, Carol just wasn't improving and she felt that the nurses weren't being very careful with her. Whatever, lady. Yeah. We know the real reason, of course. So Audrey the next morning fell ill with the same symptoms as Carol and Frank. Carol and Audrey go to University Hospital because Audrey said she wanted to get some help. Instead, she has Carol admitted. So I think, she's just trying to throw everybody off. Like, oh, no, see, I'm sick too. Ugh.
Yeah, I poisoned myself a little bit.
Right.
But she knows how much she can poison herself because she tried it out on the cops earlier.
Exactly. So Dr. Michael Thompson is the doctor that treats Carol. He gets a patient history from Carol, and then he calls over to Regional Hospital and he speaks to Dr. Elmore, Carol's previous doctor. Dr. Elmore tells him, check her for heavy metal poisoning. I'm so glad these doctors did their due diligence. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this is a step up from the doctor who was just like, oh, your stomach hurts. I diagnose you with a stomachache.
Your head hurts. I diagnose you with a headache.
That's right.
So
this man appears to be tired. He has sleepiness.
Oh gosh. All right. So Dr. Elmore finds Aldrich Mees lines under Carol's fingernails. So so Aldrich Mees lines are crosswise or horizontal white lines on the nail bed that appear during periods of stress. And they're also commonly associated with poisoning. He also found signs of arsenic accumulation. They test Carol's hair and found it to contain 100 times more than normal levels of arsenic. 100.
Yikes. Also, that means that there's a normal level of arsenic in our bodies.
Yes, there is. There is. Yes.
Yeah, that's now, well, not going to sleep again.
Just find out what the normal level is and you'll be good.
Yeah, I'm sure it's normal.
So at the same exact time, which was on October 3rd of 1979, at the same exact time that they're testing Carol and finding this poisoning, Audrey, who was in the waiting room waiting for Carol, is arrested. But she's arrested for passing bad checks in the amount of $6,502.98.
Wow. At least when she wrote the bad check, she made it exact.
Yes. These checks were written to the insurance company that held Carol's insurance policy that, Audrey was the beneficiary of. She was quickly bailed out by her family. So the tests on Carol come back positive for arsenic poisoning. Police are notified, and Frank Hilly's body is exhumed immediately and tested. They find it also tests positive. It showed between 10 and 100 times more than the normal level. So then they they exhume, I'll say it the nice way. They exhume the bodies of Lucille, which is her mother,
yes,
and Carrie, we've not mentioned before, but Carrie is Frank's mother, so Audrey's mother-in-law.
Yeah, she was just checking people off the list.
Yeah, they were both exhumed and tested, and while they both tested positive, they weren't at fatal levels. So I take that as, she was still poisoning them all along.
Yeah, and older, folks, maybe the poisoning isn't the thing, but if you weaken the immune system,
right,
it might be something else,
So Audrey, who's already incarcerated because of the bad checks, on October 9th of 1979 was indicted for the murder of Frank Hilly, her husband, and the attempted murder of her daughter, Carol. In early November, Audrey makes bail. She registers at a local Birmingham, Alabama hotel under an assumed name, and then she's gone. She flees the state. She leaves behind a note indicating that she, quote, might have been kidnapped. Her abandoned.
Sorry. The note was vague as to the kidnapping.
I might have been kidnapped. I mean, I don't know. I'm gone. I'm not coming back. Maybe somebody took me. Maybe they did.
If you find this note, I might have been kidnapped. I might just be in the store.
Like the Drake album. If you're reading this, I might have been kidnapped.
Yeah. I'm just gonna leave those notes around from now.
So Audrey's abandoned car was found in Marietta, Georgia. So Audrey is now listed as a fugitive. So that's 1979. That's November of 1979. On January 11th of 1980, Audrey was indicted in absentia for Frank's murder. A massive manhunt was launched. She was on the run for quite some time. But fortunately, we know what she was doing during that time.
Oh, she was poisoning people.
So in that January, she meets John Greenleaf Homan III in a bar in Florida. So while she's being, listed as a fugitive and indicted in absentia, she's out in a bar meeting a man, okay?
Yeah, well, gotta find the next victim.
So she meets John using the name Lindsay Robbie Hannon. She tells John that she was born and raised in Florida. She goes by Robbie. So the name she gave him was Lindsay Robbie, but she goes by Robbie. The two start dating. They end up living together. They lived together for more than a year before getting married on May 29th of 1981. And Robbie becomes Mrs. Robbie Greenleaf Homan III. The newlyweds moved from Florida to New Hampshire. Robbie talks about her twin sister, Terry. Spoiler, there's no Terry. Just putting that out there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Terry lived in Texas. Robbie also claimed to be a widow with 2 children who died in a school bus accident. She also tells John that she's about to inherit a large estate in Texas.
Right. From Terry. Yeah.
So in the summer of 1982, Robbie tells her husband, John, that she needs to attend to some family business and she needs to see some doctors about her advanced brain cancer and another rare disease that leads to too many red blood cells.
Wow. Things have escalated.
So to do this, she has to travel to Texas because remember, her sister Terry is in Texas and so are these miraculous doctors.
Right. Yeah. And the husband's just like, okay, I haven't heard about any of this. I guess you got brain cancer. Here's some money.
Right. Yeah. So Robbie leaves, travels to Texas. During Robbie's absence, Terry calls John to tell him that Robbie, unfortunately, has succumbed to her illness. And she died while in Texas.
That's too bad.
Here's the thing. Why did you have to, whatever. Nobody was on to you.
She just got bored.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess so.
She's like, I haven't killed anybody in a while, but perhaps if I invent a fake sibling.
So she tells John, hey, don't worry about any arrangements, because John's like, okay, let me come down, let me help with the arrangements. She's like, no, I got this. Don't worry about it.
And she left a note that said, I may be kidnapped.
I maybe have
don't
died.
have a funeral.
Maybe I died and maybe I didn't. So she tells John
don't have a funeral.
She tells John not to worry about it. She's got all of the arrangements under control. She also tells John that there's not going to be a body or a burial because Robbie had donated her body to Science, the Medical Research Institute. So Terry and John continue to converse, and John expresses an interest in getting to know Terry a bit more, and he says he wants to meet. Terry agrees, but she says, look, I know that was my sister, but man, life goes on. We got to move on from this. We have to move on. Say what? Huh? You have to move on from the fake death of your twin sister of yours? What? I mean, of you? Huh?
So you can seduce your husband by pretending to be your fake twin sister?
What?
I mean, so at some point, Marlena is going to get possessed by the devil. This is ridiculous. What is happening on Days of Our Lives?
Oh my goodness. What's his name? Stefano.
Stefano is
behind
it.
Stefano is behind all of this. He is the one that might have kidnapped her.
Might have. Yeah. What are those maybe kidnappings?
So Terry, after 3 months, she dyes her hair blonde and she's lost some weight. Terry goes to New Hampshire to meet John. Yes, she's meeting her husband as her imaginary dead twin sister.
I mean, just the guts. I mean, the boldness of it. It's like, I'm kind of impressed. I don't know.
So Terry and John run an obituary for Robbie in the Keene Sentinel. I thought they were supposed to be moving on.
Oh, yeah, they're moving on.
Yeah. I'm not sure why they were looking into it or what tips they had, but the obit didn't sit right with police. They tried to verify the info, but they were unable to because, fun fact, the Medical Research Institute in Texas doesn't exist.
What?
Neither did the church that they eulogized Robbie's death at. Shocked, dismayed, appalled. So John's
maybe the church and the institute were kidnapped.
They might.
It might have been
kidnapped. So of course, John takes his new friend around and he's introducing her to friends and coworkers. And John's coworkers grow suspicious of his deceased wife's sister.
Also, that's just a weird scenario. I'm sorry. If you have a friend who marries one twin and then that twin mysteriously dies and might have been kidnapped, and then suddenly he's parading around the other twin, that's just a suspicious thing all around.
Yeah, it's just all kinds of wonky. So of course,
that's where you go, perhaps I should evaluate this friendship.
I'm gonna take a step back from this. Yeah. So the New Hampshire police somehow put the pieces together and they figure out that the woman living as Terry, who was living as Robbie, who's living as whoever she is, had
this is where if it was the meme, it'd be like the Sunny in Philadelphia meme with Charlie Day in front of like the whiteboard freaking out with all the different lines
yes.
collect and everything. That was the New Hampshire police. It was like, listen to me. This all makes sense.
Okay, here's what I'm thinking. Yeah, so they put the pieces together and they figured out that it was Robbie that Terry was Robbie and Robbie had staged her death. So Terry, who had actually taken on a secretarial job in Brattleboro, Vermont, was arrested on January 12th of 1983. While she's questioned by the Vermont state troopers, she admits to it all. She admits to being Robbie. She admits to faking the death. She admits to being a fake Terry. She tells them she's Audrey Marie Hilly. She even confesses to being wanted in Alabama on bad check charges. She just word vomits everything out.
Yeah.
So, the Vermont troopers are like, no, we just do maple syrup. So we're going to send you.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah. That's that Will Ferrell meme.
Yeah.
Well, that escalated rather quickly. Yeah. So Vermont extradites Marie to Alabama to stand trial. She's expeditiously convicted because they're like, we are not messing around with this chick this time.
Yeah, she might get kidnapped if we don't hurry up.
She's convicted to 20 years. She's convicted and sentenced to life in prison for her husband's murder and 20 years for the attempted murder of her daughter, Carol. At the trial, she tries to enter an innocent plea, even after confessing, which I know people do. But come on, lady, come on. It's over. It's over.
Yeah. Just let it go.
So she begins serving her sentence at Tutwiler State Prison in Wetumpka, which is a medium security prison. Due to her clerical background, she's able to get a job doing paperwork. She is described as a quiet model prisoner. You think end of story, right?
Nah, never.
No, not yet.
No, there's another husband or something coming.
And then there's more. So her good behavior earns her multiple one-day passes from prison. And like a good model prisoner, she always returns on time. And she keeps doing that. And she keeps getting these passes and returning on time until she doesn't.
One day. Until she might have got kidnapped.
So in February of 1987, she's given a 3-day pass to visit with her husband. Is he really her husband, though? Are they really?
Twice? Is she polygamy with her own husband?
I don't know how that works. But were they even married the first time? Because she was using a fake name. So they were, I don't know. Anyway.
Again, we're back at the chart.
Right, exactly. So John had actually moved to Anniston, Alabama to be close to Robbie, Terry, Audrey, whatever. So the couple spent the day at an Anniston motel. John leaves for a few hours. This is where you put the face palm emoji. Or there's the gif of Captain Picard face palming real hard. John, what are you doing?
Yeah, not good, John.
So John leaves the hotel for a few hours, and when he returns, he finds that, Marie, Terry, Robbie is gone. But she did leave a note. Because, she loves her notes.
I may have been kidnapped.
So this time she leaves a note for John asking for her forgiveness. Some sources say that the note also stated that she wasn't going back to prison and she was fleeing to Canada with a friend named Walter.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd she meet Walter?
I knew there had to be another guy.
So John immediately calls the police. Her escape, of course, launches an investigation into Alabama's furlough policy because it's come on. You let her go off property to a hotel?
You didn't think that was going to backfire?
So Audrey wasn't missing long this time. We weren't gone for years this time. It was just a matter of days, 4 to be exact. She had apparently escaped to the woods and she'd been caught in the rain, exposing her body to temperatures that were 30s and below. Audrey ends up stumbling onto the back porch of a house owned by a woman she knew in grade school, Sue Craft. Sue calls the police to report a strange woman laid out on her porch, delirious. She had no idea that it was Audrey. She didn't recognize her. Police initially believed that this strange woman was a transient in need of help, but then they were able to determine that she was, in fact, Audrey Marie Hilly. EMT stated that Audrey had hypothermia. She was conscious when she was found. They were determined to do their job and save her. and they took her to a nearby hospital, but en route, she convulsed. She became unconscious. She had a heart attack, and upon arriving at the hospital, she entered cardiac arrest. Audrey Marie Hilley died at 5:06 p.m. from exposure and hypothermia. She was 53 years old. She's buried in Alabama next to Frank. I know he is pissed.
Wow.
He's got to be pissed.
Yeah, that's not okay.
Audrey's case appeared on Unsolved Mysteries in an episode called Diabolical Minds. And since it was already solved when the episode aired, they focused more on her diabolical mind. Others profiled on that episode were Ted Bundy and Saddam Hussein.
That's a weird combo, but all right.
Right. Connecting it a bit to the A side, Adam, there's a TV movie starring Judith Light from Who's the Boss?
Yeah, that's okay.
And it's called Wife, Mother, Murderer from 1991. It was a Lifetime movie.
See, back to the Lifetime. It is a Lifetime
movie. I mean, you would think that this was a made for TV movie, but it is a true story. And that is the story of Audrey Marie Hilley. Oh, I love that David Ogden. That's another that guy from that show for you. David Ogden Stiers is John Hillman.
And so here's the thing, like I'm looking that up because I'm like, I know that name, but why can't I? Oh yeah, that guy.
See?
Yeah. From MASH. Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that we've got one that really tops that except for maybe Iceman.
Well, in the whole, so she pretends to be somebody, marries this guy, okay? That tracks. Then she fakes her death. Okay, I get it. But then she pretends to be her twin sister, comes back, starts dating the guy. Guy's cool with it. Then she confesses everything, and he still comes to live closer to her in Alabama?
No, he doesn't leave. Like, dude, what is wrong?
Like, the threshold is too high, sir.
You couldn't find someone else, my guy? Like
it's okay to be alone.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Seriously. That is not what they meant by for better or for worse, okay?
No, I think even the priest would have been like, for better or for worse, unless she lies to you about being her twin sister, fakes her own death, and it turns out she was somebody a third person all along. Then just this is all null and void.
Unless her name is Audrey Marie, nah, you're good, dude. You're good.
Yeah,
you got an out. Yeah. That's your out clause.
Yeah, that's just too weird. We're not gonna fault you for that. We're just gonna chalk that up. It's a mulligan on everybody.
But there you go. So that's the story. That's the B-side. I need a nap after that one because whoa.
Yeah. I thought at first you were like it was gonna have like some of the stuff you mentioned, but you were kind of exaggerating. But no, no, it had every single thing you mentioned. That wasn't an exaggeration. That was just like a foreshadow of all the stuff we're going to talk about.
And that wasn't even like everything. It was just, oh no, here's just a little bit of what we're going to talk about.
And she was only 53 when she died. It wasn't like she strung this stuff out that long. It wasn't that long a life. Yeesh.
Man. I'm going to have to check out this Judith Light movie because I like Judith Light anyway. And I know there was a period of time where she was in like every Lifetime movie.
Yeah.
So I think this will be a good one.
Yeah. One of the all-time baddest jokes from some movie, not bad as in not like good, not as in good, bad, but just like pathetic, is every time I hear Lifetime mentioned, I think of American Pie, and I think it's Stifler or something. He's like, what is that channel? Like Lifetime Supply of Pantyhose or something? Yeah.
So stupid.
Why does that stick in my head?
I don't know.
can't remember so much, but that scene, that line, okay, that one, my brain was like, let's perma save.
Oh my gosh. All right. So before we go, of course, thanks to everyone that has been listening and on this journey with us for 60 episodes or even one episode. We thank you so much.
I did get some guesses, and nobody guessed my favorite movie from last week's episode. So if you haven't listened to that yet, go back and listen, and you can guess as well.
I got a couple of guesses too. That was fun. I was like, no. So absolutely go back, listen to last week's episode, take a guess, pause it, see if you can guess, see if you can figure it out. If you are enjoying the podcast, we would really appreciate it if you would share it with a friend. You can always post it, like our friend of the podcast, Sarah, did post it on her Instagram, and told everybody to take a listen. You could do that. We would love it. You can also like us, follow us on Apple. You can give us a great rating if you so choose. That would definitely help us out and get us higher in the ratings.
You can add us on the Spotify and then ask your Alexa to play your A-Side B-Side podcast
on the Spotify.
On the Spotify, the Alexa. Alma, play my Spotify podcast.
Yes, absolutely. You can also follow us on YouTube. We have a Facebook, we have an Instagram, we have a Twitter, we have a Patreon. You can support the show by buying us a coffee, and that's legit. You can buy us a coffee. It's buymeacoffee.com/A-Side-B-Side-pod. All of the proceeds from that are for production and promotion and legit coffee. Mm-hmm. So, and of course the website, Adam, we post our pictures and our sources on it. What is it?
A-Side B-Side podcast.square.site.
So good. All right.
I got one job in this whole thing, and I finally did it right.
So next week, definitely hoping, gonna try to squeeze that in. I really want to do a podcast next week, but if not, please don't hold that against us. It's just because I'm moving and it's hectic, but we'll definitely be back.
Absolutely.
All right, Adam, anything else?
No, everybody have a fun fall, and y'all drive safe.
A duck blind on Reelfoot Lake in northwestern Tennessee becomes the unlikely site of a double homicide. Then the suspect's body is discovered floating in the murky waters nearby to the scene of the crime.
Maya Miliete goes missing from Chula Vista after a fight with her husband, leading friends and family to believe he might be involved.
Tune in to Murder News, the Listen Edition, every Friday for the biggest true crime cases making headlines each week.
Subscribe to Murder News, the Listen Edition, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Murder News.
Oh, Adam, you know what? I do have one other thing before we go. And I know we've run a little bit long, but I think we can't let this episode go without mentioning, in a couple of days, it will be the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
Yes.
Do you remember where you were?
I do. I was in my room asleep, and my roommate knocked on the door, which he never did. And he's like, "Hey, you should come see this." And I assumed that something was wrong in the house. And so I come out in my pajamas, and my other roommates are sitting on the couch, just staring at the TV. And that's when the second plane, I saw it because it was live at that point. When the second plane hit is when I walked out of the bedroom. And then we didn't leave that couch. 4 or 5 of us, everybody just sitting there in their pajamas for like the rest of the day, just watching and shocked, stunned stuff. And I didn't go to class. And then the campus had told students not to worry about it, but then our director wanted to have rehearsal. We were rehearsing South Pacific at the time, And no, it was not South Pacific. It was Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. I don't know. It was a musical, but I was not in a musical move, so it was the only time that I have ever skipped rehearsal without a reason, other than it was a real reason.
I remember I was on my way to school. I had dropped my kids off at daycare, and I was on my way. I had gone back to school after getting out of the military, and I had dropped them off at school, and I was on my way to school, but I also worked at a radio station at that time. So I ditched school and ran to the radio station to see what I could do to help. And I also contacted a recruiter because at that time I was inactive guard for the Army and was, like wanting to know my options, because at that time I was like, what can I, coming from the, that military side, I was like, what can I do? And then I was like, wait, I've got 2 little kids and I'm a single mom. There's not much I can do. But at that moment, it was like, what can I've got to do something. What can I do? And then, having 2 little kids come home and ask me why somebody would do something so mean. How do you explain that? Because as an adult, we have no idea. No. So yeah, I remember that. All of our first responders that day and the following days, I was listening to a podcast earlier from a doctor who was in the emergency room that day. And in New York after the towers fell, and just hearing him relive that and just tell the tales of the doctors and the nurses and the firefighters and the EMTs and
And I mean, when it happened, it felt surreal, and it like I was watching a movie. And then in January of 2002, I went to New York for a theater tour, and we were going to shows and things, and we were just wandering around New York, and I turned a corner and we were right there. And there was the fence, and there were still all the memorials on the fence. And I don't think I truly got it. Like, I got it, but I didn't feel it until that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never forget that just horrible realization when you're walking, and we were joking and laughing, and all of a sudden I saw all these pictures of people on this fence, and I was like, what's this all about? And then I realized where I was, and it was the first time it became like truly real. And so I've been able to go back and see the memorial since, and if you've never been, I highly recommend checking it out. There's something about being in the place that I think gives it a reality that it's so easy to be disconnected when you just see it on TV.
I think the last 18 months, we've talked about doctors and nurses, and I can only, and we thank them, but imagine having like all of that squished into all of like the doctors and nurses in New York, having all of those people like at one time. Like they say there was 30,000 people in the World Trade Center, and there's still 1,000 unaccounted for because those buildings just vaporized.
Yeah.
So our the officers, the firefighters, the doctors, the nurses, the EMTs, I read the story about a man who his wife and daughter were in one of the towers, and he just said he dropped everything he was doing and ran to the towers to find them, because he had to know either they were alive or just their whereabouts. He found his wife huddled in the childcare center he found his wife huddled, like just holding a group of children. And he had seen a bus driver that had just dropped off some first responders and convinced this bus driver to get these children and teachers out of this building, and like drove them to the pier to get them on a boat, to get them to safety. He saved like 63 people, mostly children, because he was looking for his wife and child. So there's a ton of unsung heroes that aren't doctors or nurses or police officers that, you know, stepped up that day as well. I mean, that was truly when humanity was at its finest. Like everybody came together.
There's the story that, you know, tons of stories always pop up around this time, but I think one, and I think it's true. I don't know. There's so much on the internet, but Steve Buscemi was a firefighter before he was an actor. And evidently I've seen this a bunch of times, and I don't know if it's been debunked or not, but it always shows that he went back to his old precinct and volunteered as a firefighter on 9/11 as a volunteer to help, because he was trained as, you know, a firefighter, and what just showed up at the station and said, what can I do? So there were hundreds of, you know, thousands of people that did things like that.
And you know, Pete Davidson, of course, from SNL, lost his dad, and that is actually a true story about Steve Buscemi, by the way.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you see it online, and we're all just so jaded at this point that, you know, it feels like, you know, it's hard to believe any good news or any good story is real.
Yeah, but yeah, so Steve Buscemi helping out the NYFD. So, man, but I just felt like we couldn't let the podcast go without mentioning that it has been 20 years since that day.
Yeah. Which is crazy.
Anyway, all right. Well, Adam.
Brooke.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. See you later.